Visa Starfrost has finally arrived at the primeval planet Pearl Reno, home of the Tearlaments. I gotta say, Tearlaments, they are projected to be one of the most powerful and best upcoming decks in this game. Now, if you're into graveyard trigger strategies like Shaddolls or Lightsworn, then this deck is going to help you a lot. It brings a lot of synergy to the table. In this video, we're dropping some major info, such as the fundamentals of the entire deck and some of their release rarities. And as a little bit of a extra bonus, all I can say is you can expect more support from them coming from magnificent Mavens and even more support in Darkwing Blast. So make sure you guys smash that like button, destroy the subscribe button, and don't forget to banish that notification bell. Alright, so let's go! So most, if not all, Tearlament cards have a graveyard-based trigger if they're sent to the graveyard by a card effect. This is very much like a quality that they share with Shaddoll monsters. And this is also inclusive to some of their non-monster cards as well. Another feature that they share with Shaddolls is that their method of summoning their strongest monster is by fusion summoning. But what makes them unique is their method of fusion summoning, through placing the materials from your hand, field, or graveyard to the bottom of the deck. But you know what? Let's start off with some basic monsters. Starting with the one that is a little bit different, we have Tearlaments Reinoheart. This is a water warrior monster, which is very different from the rest of the main monster cast, which are made up of dark aqua monsters. Even the graveyard trigger effect of this monster is a little bit different, but looking into all of its effects, starting off with the summon trigger, if this card is normal or special summon, you get to send one Tearlaments monster from your deck to the graveyard, except for another copy of itself, essentially functioning much like an Armageddon Knight. This essentially leads to the fusion summoning effects of all the other maidens, because all of the other maidens, when they are sent to the graveyard by a card effect, they perform the fusion summon as mentioned before. As for this monster's own graveyard trigger, if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you will be able to special summon it back onto the field, and if you do, you have to send one Tearlaments card from your hand to the graveyard. Essentially, if you don't have a Tearlaments card, you will not be able to summon itself from the graveyard. You won't be able to activate it. Essentially, you want to summon out this card every turn because it guarantees the ability to perform a fusion summon, and that fusion summon is going to help you build board presence. And to capitalize off of this effect, make sure you have a healthy amount of fusion material in your graveyard to do so. And this card is likely going to be an ultra rare. Next, we're going to look at the Dark Aqua monster lineup. Starting with the level 2, Tearlaments Merly. Merly is one of the potential starters of the deck because when you normal or special summon this card, you get to send the top 3 cards of the deck to the graveyard as a card effect, which could potentially lead to a lot of graveyard triggers happening. And the effect that she shares with all the other Dark Aqua monsters in the current lineup, you can fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck by placing fusion materials mentioned on it from your hand, field, or graveyard, including this card in your graveyard, to the bottom of the deck in any order. This applies to the next 2 monsters that we speak of as well. There is no specific restriction for the fusion monster as long as the Tearlaments monster triggered in the graveyard can be used as a material for that fusion summon. So if you pair it with a Shaddoll monster, you can see some really early game El Shaddoll window to lock your opponent out from additional special summons. Next, you have Tearlaments Havnis, and this is one of the most powerful cards in the deck, and you want to see it in the opening hand, especially when you're not going first. When your opponent activates a monster effect on the field, you get to special summon out this card from your hand and send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. This could lead to you setting up your plays during your opponent's turn, or better yet, if you send the right combination of cards, such as a Shaddoll monster or a Tearlaments card, you could summon out an El Shaddoll window, locking your opponent from summoning out their board because they need special summons, and it's very difficult to special summon through an El Shaddoll window. Last but not least, we have Tearlaments Scheiren, the last Dark Aqua monster, and this card functions as both a play starter or as an extender because you're able to special summon this card from your hand as long as you can send one monster from your hand to the graveyard and then send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. And since the card sent to the graveyard is by a card effect, if you send a Tearlaments monster, you're going to be extending into perhaps a fusion summon, or if you send Reinoheart, you get to summon out the Reinoheart and then perform a fusion summon afterwards. So there's like a lot that you can do with this card, but if you get disrupted by your opponent and you need another monster to keep things going, then this card is definitely the one to go to because she carries a free special summon, more or less, as long as you have a monster in your hand. Onto the fusion lineup, starting off with Tearlaments Kid Kalos, pouring a Tearlaments monster and an Aqua monster. If this card is special summon, you can take one of your Tearlaments card from your deck, either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. That's really good functionality and utility, and it can help you bridge your plays so that you can build bigger boards, establish bigger board presence against your opponent, or you can search for key utility pieces that you need. And it has another effect where you can target one monster you control, special summon one Tearlaments monster from your hand or graveyard, and if you do, send the target monster to the graveyard. Remember, the sent monster is sent by a card effect, so you're using her to trigger additional effects. And if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, send the top 5 cards from your deck to the graveyard. So that's going to essentially load your graveyard for more fusion material and prepare yourself for a bigger push afterwards. This is a very essential card in the deck and one of the early plays that you go into to build your board presence. And by the looks of it, she's probably an ultra rare. Our very first secret rare reveal, we have Tearlaments Heart, and this requires Reinoheart and 2 aqua monsters to perform to the summon. Now, it cannot be used as fusion material. This is actually a blessing because it protects you against Super Poly and Fallen of Albaz summons. And if this card is special summoned, or if an aqua monster is sent to the graveyard by a card effect while this card is on the field, you get to target 1 card your opponent controls and shuffle it back into the deck. This is the best form of removal to help you avoid graveyard-based triggers, banish-based triggers, or leaving field triggers. And if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, which you should probably avoid, or you would love it when your opponent does it, because you can special summon this card, and if you do, send 1 Tearlaments card from your deck to the graveyard, essentially triggering a whole slew of more effects, and that's probably going to lead to your victory. So this is the board pressure of the deck and one of the strongest bosses. And it kind of reminds me a little bit like Tri-Brigade Shurig, where if you leave Shurig on the board, you're going to get your cards banished more and more. If you leave this monster on board, your cards are going to get shuffled back into the deck more and more. All right, we're more than halfway through. We got 3 more trap cards and 1 spell card to reveal to you guys, starting with the trap card lineup. Now note that most of these trap cards, they have 1 key effect that essentially is their activated effect, and their secondary effect would be their graveyard trigger effect when they're sent to the graveyard by a card effect. Our first trap card, Tearlaments Meta Noise. This one functions like a Book of Moon with a little bit of Foolish Barrel attached to it. If you control a Tearlaments monster or a Visa Starfrost, target a face-up monster your opponent controls and change it to face-down defense position. Then send 1 Tearlaments monster from your deck to the graveyard. So you're going to be able to, flip something face down and then also get additional graveyard trigger, either a Reinoheart and set up your graveyard even more, or perform fusion summons by sending, say, a Havnis or any of the other dark aqua monsters. Now, as for the graveyard trigger by sending to the graveyard by a card effect, you get to target a Tearlaments monster in your graveyard and add it back to your hand. Just note that if you do mill some of these trap cards into the graveyard, you're going to maintain card advantage thanks to that. Next, the continuous spell Soliak. This one more or less functions similar to an effect negator, where if you control a Tearlaments monster or Visa Starfrost, you can target an effect monster opponent controls and negate its effects, and then send 1 monster you control to the graveyard. So you get to negate a monster effect and send one of your own to the graveyard, hopefully triggering additional fusion summons. Or if you somehow send, say, your Heart, that's going to lead to like the big monster happening, summoning onto the field, and then sending another card into the graveyard. So you're just going to be doing some massive damage onto the field. And if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you get to add a Tearlaments monster from your deck to your hand. So not too bad if you do send this card to the graveyard. And finally, the last trap card, we have Tearlaments Crime. And this is a counter trap card. When a spell or trap card or monster effect is activated while you control Tearlaments or Visa Starfrost, you get to negate the activation, and if you do, shuffle it back into the deck. Yes, we're not destroying cards, we're putting stuff back into the deck, then send 1 monster in your hand to the graveyard. So that particular part is also part of the effect, but remember, you need to have a monster in your hand to be able to activate this. Otherwise, you will not be able to activate it at all because you are unable to resolve all parts of the effect. But essentially, it's still really good. And if this is somehow sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you get to add a banished Tearlaments monster back to your hand. So yeah, maintaining card advantage some more. And our final secret rare reveal, which is going to be the field spell card, Primeval Planet Perlarino. This is an essential field spell because it helps you search for your monster, as upon activation you get to add 1 of your Tearlaments monster from your deck to your hand, or Visa Starfrost if that's what you're looking for. All of your fusion monsters and Tearlaments monster, they are able to gain 500 attack while this card remains face up on the field, and it also provides you with a little bit of control against your opponent. Whenever your Tearlaments monster you control or in your graveyard is put back into the deck or extra deck, you can target a card on the field and destroy it. So, provides you with a little bit of a safety net against your opponent's setups. And you can only use this effect of Primeval Planet Perlarino once per turn, and you can only activate 1 copy of this per turn. That's it for this review video, guys. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, smash that thumbs up button. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ding that notification bell. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one.